lots and lots of you will have heard about person-centred change, about being person-centred. Lots of you will have experience with change. So how many of you have experienced change in the workforce recently? Yes, that's about right. I'm not even going to ask how many people have experienced change in their home lives. That's an ongoing sort of thing that we don't want to get too much into that sort of stuff. Now, what we're trying to focus on is that in our work lives and being person-centred, we're well aware of how we can support individuals with being person-centred. It's a battle, it changes, it goes up and down, it is what it is. But we're not always aware of how we can support each other, our staff, our colleagues, managers, to be person-centred. And when we're thinking about change and this incredible process that we're going through at the moment with all the sector changes and things that are happening, that it's becoming more and more important to be thinking about ourselves as staff members, as volunteers, in how we can support ourselves in order to effectively support somebody else. And what I've identified and thought about is that the really good principles of being person-centred apply really, really well with those change management processes along the way. Now, one of the first things that I'd like you to do is to be thinking about these common responses to change. So this is Myers-Briggs. Have anyone got their Myers-Briggs personality all sorted out? Yeah. Nicely slotted into who you are and that's it? You fit right in? Fantastic. Well, Myers-Briggs has apparently decided that there's 8 categories that we all fit into again. Very person-centred, of course. You all fit into these 8 categories nicely, I'm sure. That these are common responses to change. So I'll read through them and get a sense of what they are. And I want you to be thinking if there's any that really resonate with you. Are there any that you think, yeah, that's more me than others? And I do appreciate that you might identify with all 8 of them in any given day, depending on your ups and downs and what you've eaten for breakfast. You might also identify differently with different sorts of elements, depending on whether you're at home or you're at work or different jobs. So just be thinking about experiencing change at the moment, perhaps, and how you might relate to them. So number 1 is that you approach change enthusiastically. That might be someone who's maybe experienced good change before and knows that it can be great, and that you're the enthusiastic, positive person that likes to support people through change in a really energetic, positive sort of way. Number 2 is that you might approach change in a measured way. Perhaps someone I heard recently that says, no, we can't do any change until we can't do this program until we have a report. I want to commission a full research report on the statistics here and the data there, and that's when we'll do something about it. So perhaps you're someone that likes to see some evidence, some measured options before you move into anything as you go along. Number 3 is that you might take an outcome oriented approach. So perhaps you need to know the outcome. What's the end result? What are we working towards? How are we going to figure this out along the way? But ultimately, what are we working towards? I need to know that end goal. What about a process-oriented approach? So somebody that needs to know step by step what's going on. The process is this is how we're going to move through it until we get to the end. Or proceed step by step. So perhaps you don't need to know the process or what's happening next. That I just want to get through one step at a time. Don't confuse me with everything that's going on or where on earth it's going. I just want to get through a step at a time, and we'll go that way. Perhaps you prefer change to be harmonious. So perhaps you know that it can be positive. It's not necessarily somebody who thinks that change is always going to be harmonious. Perhaps it's not someone that's terrified of conflict and just wants it to be wonderful. Perhaps you just know that it can be positive, and that's how you'd like it to happen. Number 7 is that you prefer change to be logical, and I see this as the one where you need to know why. What's in it for me? Why on earth are we going down this pathway? Maybe that's the logical one here. Or someone that jumps from step to step. So I see a few creative types jumping from step to step, saying, this is where I'm going to go, this is where I'm good today, I'm going to go here and do this. So whatever you feel like, whatever your strengths are on that day, that's where you're going to go with change. Here, there and everywhere. And they can be very enthusiastic and energetic in that change process as well. So what I'd like you to do is have a think. Do any of those resonate more with you than others? And I know that, as I said, that there are possibly numbers of those options that you would like to choose from and go with them. But perhaps if you had to choose one, which one would be more likely to be more like you. And what I'd like you to do is turn to the person beside you and tell them your name. You might already know them or you might not. Your name, the organisation that you're representing, and if you already know each other, then that'll be lovely and easy. And then tell them the sort of change or the sort of response to change that you most resonate with, or that you most like or respond to, and tell them what change that is, and perhaps an experience of what's happened to help you choose that particular one. So turn to the person beside you, tell them your organisation, your name, and which one you chose and why. I don't want anyone to miss out, so make sure that you have a chance to speak to you speak to your partner as well. Has everyone had a chance to talk about their change response? Okay, good. Now, we don't just leave it there. We have a bit of a think usually about, and so what? So what if that's who I am? And the next question that we ask, so if change is to be really successful for me, as something that's mentioned up here, what do I need in order for change to be positive for me in the workplace? So people often need, if people need change to be enthusiastic, how many of those in the room here today need change to be enthusiastic? Or approach change enthusiastically? Does anyone have an idea of that if change is to be positive in the workplace for you, what needs to happen? Anyone got any ideas? Yes.
To know the end goal.
Ah, yes.
So I'll change, but I need to know where I'm going.
Yes, fantastic. All right, so in order for change to be successful, perhaps people need to, great support for you would be, just tell me what the end goal is, or share it, or decide, whatever. Anybody else? Yes.
I have to talk about it and communicate it with people.
You have to talk about it and communicate it with people. Not sit and write it. Okay, great. So then now we're talking about different communication preferences as well coming into it. Fantastic. Anybody else?
I just get bored, so I'd like change to
Happen quickly. It might be a step-to-step jumper depending on the whim. Yes, fantastic. So change probably needs to happen quite quickly. And if it's not going to happen quickly, what do? Welcome to the NDIS. Yes, step by step, knowing how it's going to occur. And so what do we need from our managers then? If this is all very different, what sort of things would be helpful from our managers or our organisation then? Transparency? Consultation. So you need to be a part of all this sort of stuff. Different approaches, yeah, absolutely. So perhaps, in the room today, I wouldn't mind betting that each and every one of us are represented here. So that if our sector, our organisation is going to support us through change, we probably need each and every one of these approaches to be somehow represented. I use an example that if someone is going to send a letter out to an organisation telling them of this grandiose change that's about to happen, and you know that letter's not going to be well received, or it is, whatever, you could probably even include each and every one of these elements in that one letter, rather than just doing it the way that that I might write a letter or that I think is positive, I might need to take into consideration each and every one of these elements. Talk about the outcome, talk about why we're doing it and what we think is in it. Talk about what we think the outcome is going to be, etc., etc. Now, the problem with some of the changes that we're experiencing at the moment is that there's no outcome. We don't always know the outcome. And that's really difficult if lots of us are very outcome oriented people, that we need to know the end or we need to know why, the logic in it. Even that step-by-step process or that process-oriented sort of approach is difficult if we don't know what the outcome is. It's hard to know what the next step is if we don't know what the end is happening. So that becomes very difficult, and that's why it becomes really important to be thinking about person-centred approaches in response to change, because some of those diagrams that suit for organisational change suggest, tell them the outcome. Make sure that you include those step-by-step processes. But if we don't know what they are, then we need to be thinking individually about support through a difficult change process. Now, in relation to being person-centred, how I see the mix going really well here for me is that this language is used specifically in training in order to support people with disabilities or people in mental health or in hospitals or whatever sector or area that we're engaging in being person-centred. And we use language like, how can the person best participate? It's not whether or not they can participate, that's in person-centred language, that's a given. It's about how they can best participate and finding that sort of stuff out. We're supporting people to have positive control over their own lives. And absolutely, that makes good sense for people in our services and what we can do to impact that. We talk about that being person-centred, or a definition about being person-centred, is a promise to listen to what is being said, and also what is meant by being said. We're listening to behaviour as well as actions. And a promise to keep listening, to keep going along the way. And that's some of the key elements of being person-centred. And when we think about ourselves in that capacity, about the changes that we're experiencing in our workplace, doesn't that make great sense to have that applied to ourselves via our staff, our colleagues, and perhaps our managers or whatever that may be? So I think about how can people best participate? What's your change style? How do you like to participate and contribute in that change process? And perhaps if you are the energetic, enthusiastic person, how great to engage you and to be positive around the workforce and the workplace, so that really supports people to be positive about change. So if that's your style, wouldn't that be nice to be engaged in that way? Supporting you to have positive control over this process, knowing, contributing, being a part of consultation around this process. What a powerful part of being person-centred to engage you in the change process. Now, I promise to listen, so people listening to what you're saying, but also perhaps listening to your behaviour and looking and asking questions. And a great example that for me has really came home is that I also work part-time at a volunteer resource centre. And all the resource centres in Australia, our funding has been removed and has been given to the great gods in DSS, and we're allowed to apply for it back again. We haven't heard yet. The funding is due to finish in December, and we still haven't heard. I think we've got an extra 2 months, so we're sort of hanging on to see whether or not we get this great sense of funding that we've applied for. And we've been talking in our team, and it's tricky. People don't really know if they've got a job past December, we've got an extra 2 months past February, so we're right now. And so, we've been talking and saying, no, the board has said it's okay, that they'll support us and it won't be a surprise. We've still got a job, at least for the next financial year. And all the teams say, yeah, that's okay, I'm okay. I've got another job here, I'm okay. I've got this here, yeah, we're in it as a team. And then we're still running training, we're still doing bits and pieces. And I noticed that one of our staff wasn't coming to any of the professional development stuff. I'd come and there'd be an excuse, I'm not turning up here, or I've got something else to do, whatever it is. And when we sat down, so she just wasn't turning up at anything, even though she said she wanted to. And when we sat down and had a chat about it, what came out, she said, why would I bother going if we're not going to have a job here? What does it matter? I'm wasting my time. So her behaviour, or what she was actually saying, was different to what was going on. So in a person-centred way, just that act of listening to her behaviour or listening to what she was actually meaning had a big impact on our connection together, I suppose. And then now I need to keep listening, and we need to keep working together. So that's a bit of a link for me around being person-centred for the people that we're supporting, and also being person-centred for ourselves here as well. Now, this is really difficult to read. I understand that, but get an idea that there's one side and there's another side. It seems like one is bad and one is good. I've got the next slide is more detail, so I'll tell you a little bit about it. So we're looking at a standard model of organisational change. If you Google organisational change, it's all over. There's heaps and heaps of stuff. So essentially what we'll relate here is this concept that you can go one way or the other. You can be negative or it can be positive. The negative side of it on the left, and then the positive side has really great benefits. If you engage with this negative sort of behaviour and fear and worry, then you end up in distress and you have resistance amongst staff. The other side of it is if you see some positive things and you listen to people and you engage in consultation, then you have positive stuff, and then you have positive reactions like cooperation and all sorts of exciting things. So here's the left and the right in a little bit more detail. So we have the negative perceptions or fears. And tell me if you've ever thought or experienced this in your workplace around fear, around change before. So we have loss. That might be a loss of your job that you're worried about, a loss of your teammates, or the people that you've been supporting, worrying about the loss that they might experience in change. Threat, ambiguity. So, I hear lots of gossip sort of stuff that people aren't meaning to gossip about people. It's gossip about where our sector's going, or gossip around whether or not we will have a job, whether or not we'll get funding here or what's going to happen there. People having lots of guesswork, and that creates negative perceptions or worry. Work overload, job insecurity, lack of control, unpredictability. The positive actions that's meant to be sliding up here on the top very nicely is people participating. If you participate and contribute and connect, then it's likely to have a positive effect. Benefit finding what's in it for you, figuring out what on earth can work for you in this sort of process. Organisational justice. I was talking to someone yesterday about still fighting the good fight. How do you keep battling on for people if you're not sure if your service is going to be around? It gets really tricky. Communication, support, and ongoing training, being a part of. It's hard to engage change and know where to go if you don't actually have the skills and resources in order to get to the next part of it, I suppose. Training is a really, or information sharing is a really big part of that. So what I'll do today is share a model that works in order to help you turn these negative fears into personalised support for someone. Perhaps it's a model that you can just use in conversation with someone, or it's a model that you can write down with a colleague or a team or a friend or someone that's in your service to help them and figure out how do these negative perceptions turn into an element of support for you and a greater understanding of what's important to them. We'll also introduce at the end as well an organisational model that might work on a bigger scale and how some of those elements of an organisational structure might fit into here. So if you're just thinking about wondering how to support an individual or a team or a group of people in your organisation, I'm converting the negative reputation exercise into something that might make sense for us. Does anyone remember doing this negative reputation exercise in any person-centred training before? Good, that's good. So what we've got is that I'm using this fear about change as the negative reputation. So this is the big ugly thing that's in the corner is their fears around change and what might happen. And we all have them. So that the concept is that if someone comes up to you and expresses fears, or perhaps if you have fears and you're not quite sure what to do about it, here's something that we can do about it. So number one is to think, is there something positive about this change that I can articulate and document? So get a bit of both sides of the picture. Yes, I'm fearful, but is there something positive to help balance that concept out? 2, write down the fears and have a think about that. 3, be thinking about, actually, what is important to me? Does this fear tell me that there's something that's really at the core of what's going on for me that might relate to other areas? And if I address that concept, then we might help work through that sense of fear. So what is that, or why is this a fear for me? Is there something particular about my life, my history, my work experience that might relate here? And has there been a change in the past that has affected me negatively in some way that makes this fear very pertinent for me? And we know that the history or people's experience with change is a really big part to how they might react to change ultimately. I mean, you think about how many changes there have been to the disability or the mental health sectors or to your organisations, and they haven't all been positive. And they haven't all meant, incredible amounts of wonderful service for people. So we do have this history or this fear of change around what's going on at the moment. And then the best bit is then all this information is great, but what support do I need through this process? And you might ask questions like, well, what is my common response to change? And then what do I need through that? If I'm a little bit worried about change, do I need somebody that's positive? Do I need my manager, regardless of what their traditional response to change might be, do I need them to be that positive energizer, enthusiasm person? How can my colleagues help me, and how can my manager help? And this starts the process of saying, yep, this is a tricky time for me. Here's the support that I want, and it allows you to go up to somebody else and say, this is what I'm expecting and this is what I want, in the sort of language that suits you. So I'll take you through an exercise. I did some stuff myself, rather than asking you to do it here right now, because it does take a bit of thought and a bit of time. I've done all the thinking and sobbing for you. So with the example of our Volunteer Resource Centre, I've articulated some things that have made sense for me to see how this might play out. So the fact that we've lost the recurrent funding, we don't know if we'll be successful for any of the grants, and now our boss is saying, be innovative. Isn't this exciting? Yeah, sort of. It's a bit worrying. So number one, is there anything positive about this change for me? Well, yes, we can change the way we do things. We don't have to be reliant on a service agreement that says you have to document this many hours or do it this particular way. How exciting. Let's try and be thrilled about this and be creative. Number two is that we can seek some more sustainable forms of funding. So we can jump into bed with Bunnings or something like that if we want, and see if we can be accountable to somebody else in that way. So, there's exciting options here. And we can do it our way. We can say, actually, I'm not sure if the way that we've been doing it based on our service agreement is right. Perhaps we can actually ask the community what they want. Maybe we can do something a little bit differently there. So when we start to think about that way, then we get all excited. It doesn't take away that I am nervous about things, that I have some fear. And one of them is that I'm worried I'll lose my job at short notice. So I'm excited I get to come to this sort of stuff as part of my other job. So it's not all destitution at my house. However, I am worried about short term, that the board all of a sudden says, no, you're right, I'm worried about this, then I think your team has to go. Number two is that I'm worried that I don't have the skills for innovation. I was talking about this earlier, that I say, I've got an idea, I think there's something fabulous that we can do. Yeah, 47 other organisations are already doing that, Tara. Well done. So, I'm really worried that I'm supposed to be exciting and championing this sort of stuff, but, I'm worried that perhaps my set of skills aren't around innovation. And what do I do there? Then I'm afraid the people in my team will have a pretty crappy time with all this as well, and I want to support them. I know how to support people through change, so get on with doing it, Tara, and make sure that the people in your team have a great time. Great time with change. So then what is important to me if I have a really good look at it? So financial security is still important. So it's a security sense. It's not that I have a job here or there, it's that sense of security. So number two, what's important to me is doing an excellent job at work. That's something that's a big deal. Regardless of what my job is or whether I'm innovative or not, then I still want to be really, really good at it and celebrate and all that sort of stuff. And I really don't want to let the team down. That's a big part of who I am in the job, and that's very important, and I need to acknowledge that and think about that. So, how to turn that into support. So after doing this exercise, I've asked my manager to make sure that he can keep me updated on what the board are discussing, so that I feel like I'm at least a little bit, in the know somehow to figure out how that might work, so that then that alleviates my sense of worry. And that's really simple. I know that this might change and that I might not have a job at some stage. However, my worry about losing my job at short notice is alleviated if my manager updates me after the board meetings to see if there's anything that they've had a chat about that's reasonable to share with me. Now, I want him to reassure me that innovation is a team effort, that I don't have to come up with all these wonderful, amazing ideas all by myself. And when I realised that when he did the other day, and we did stuff together as a team, how powerful that connection is that there is also really exciting ideas in the team if we just ask and get together and have this interesting idea called collaboration. And I've asked the team, I've shared this with them and said, look, I'd really like you to share your concerns with me openly as much as you can, and set some things up like supervision or regular chats where people have the opportunity to do that. So what I've done here is I've turned some worrying niggles that I have into something that's realistic, and it's a set of support that is right for me. Therefore, it's person-centred because that's how to support me in a workplace, and it is not related to anybody else. I've taken responsibility for my own support, and I haven't relied on somebody else to give it to me without asking. So this allows me to identify what's right for me and to use the terminology or the words that I can ask somebody else for support as well. So it's a bit of sustainable for myself, I suppose. But it's also a tool that I'm able to use with my team managers, my team members, sorry. If someone comes up to me and says, I'm worried about this, Tara, then we can talk about it in this particular sort of style, and then that might help them take responsibility and share some of that tips for great support. Are there any questions or thoughts about this? No worries.
I was just thinking this would be really good to actually use as part of our staff performance appraisals when there's so much change happening. This sort of was part of the discussion.
Yeah, so the comment was that it might be used as part of a staff performance appraisal. Absolutely. I think it takes some of that worry away from someone saying, I'm having a performance appraisal, I might get fired, and to share some of that responsibility about what's working and not working about that. Absolutely. Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions? Well, let's move on to the last one. So this working together for change concept might be familiar for some people in the room. Again, it's difficult to read, but I'll read through some of the options here, and if you have a look at the title, and you can certainly Google it or check out the Helen Sanderson Associates website anyway. What this is an organisational type process, and that if there's anyone in the room that is interested in an organisational process or even a team-based process, this is something that works quite well if you're trying to get some outcomes, some actions, and perhaps some sort of strategy happening. So number one is about preparation, is about saying, where am I going to use this information and being clear about it? What is this outcome going to achieve, or what are we trying to achieve here? And what are we hoping to do with this wonderful proposal or strategy that we're going to see at the end? So being quite clear of, yes, I'm gathering information and I'm asking for your opinion, and here's why. So this particular process talks very clearly that they use person-centred reviews, so having meetings with individuals in your service and asking them what's working and not working, and utilising people, the stakeholders in your organisation, the people that use your service, staff, volunteers, whoever else, you're getting their opinion as well. So you come together in this process having gathered a fair bit of information. So number two is that collection point, about making sure that you do a whole lot of research beforehand. You do surveys, you do questions, you get a sense of where people are at in terms of what's working for them and what's not working in relation to change, the organisation, whatever it may be. Now you theme them because you're going to get lots and lots of different points of view, and there'll be lots of commonalities around those areas. So you do some theming together, and traditionally this process happens in a big meeting, that the theming happens with people seeing their ideas being put up and shared and having a great discussion. And then what you do then is you figure out your understanding about that, and what that is getting a clear idea about what are the causes of those things that are not working and that are working. So that if there's a large amount of people that say I don't get enough service I don't get enough resources or services from your organisation, and would that be a common thing for people around here, that people are worried, people that use your services say it's a great service but I need more? Yep. So if someone says there's a common theme in your organisation, one of those causes might be funding, one of those causes might be the way that it's structured, one of the causes might be about eligibility, who knows? But you figure out those key causes here, and then you flip it on its head, and you identify success indicators. So if this program, if people were to have all the services that they want, what would that look like? And it might be just that everybody that is eligible that wants a service has exactly what they want and what they need. So you have this utopian view of success that you're working towards. You have the issues on one side, and then you plan, and you potter in the middle. And you figure out how you're going to step through this step by step. And if it's done in collaboration, you've gotten great information in that preparation and collecting phase that people are a part of it. The planning process and the solutions that you come up with are ones that are relevant for the people in your organisation. And it's not just reliant on Tara, who's now very innovative, to come up with these ideas. It's also discussing and utilising that team approach and figuring that out. Then you implement it, and you do it, and you trial it, and you see how it goes, and you have an understanding that you're testing things out. This is a process of change, and that you're trialling new and wonderful ideas, and so you need to have some sense of review at the end to see where you're working and what's going on. So this particular style, there's lots of different styles of ways that you can review and do some strategic planning with people and with organisations. But this is just one of those ways, or a process that is person-centred as well, because you're allowing everybody's points of view. You're collecting information very clearly about what's working and not working from all your stakeholders, all the people that are involved, and you're involving them in the process of figuring out how to go step by step. You can see in the pictures that it can be quite visual. We use when we're doing it all together. We are very visual. You will use big pieces of paper and sticky notes and all that sort of stuff. And that way it doesn't matter. The question is how can people best participate? So you can have all sorts of different demographics within that room, sharing information and having the resources. So this is just one of those elements. Let me check the time. So there's two things that we've talked about or had a look at this morning. One is a situation where if you're faced one-on-one or that you want to deal on a personal level with some of those fears and issues around change, then on a person-centred level, you can use that sense of accountability by writing some things down on the negative reputation exercise. But you can also help people identify that really great areas of support that is specific for them in a way that's person-centred. And if you'd like to look at change in a person-centred way that is a little more organisationally focused in a bigger picture, then perhaps this working together for change option is something that might work. But ultimately, because our experience is so tricky at the moment in terms of that we don't know the answers, it's really difficult to figure out the process and the outcomes and have great, ideas about where this is all going. We need to approach this in a very person-centred way. We need to be listening, to continue to keep listening, speaking to people and approaching it on a really individual level. And in that way, then my favourite area of change or the response that I like is that I'm someone that prefers change to be harmonious. Was there anyone else in the room that prefers change to be harmonious? Yeah, there's not many of us. I'm someone, because I know that change can be harmonious. I know that it doesn't matter how tricky it is, how awful it is, that if you take people through the journey with you, that you have power with people instead of power over people, that it can be harmonious. You can work through this together and go to the end. So, change can be wonderful and harmonious. And now the next session that we're going to be looking at, and that's where I'm going to be needing people near tables and texters, is that we're going to be addressing the experiences for ourselves in our workplaces right now, and working through some of these processes and asking the question, what is change? What are we experiencing in our workplace right now? What is working, what is not working, and what are we going to do about it? So, if people are nicking off for this next session, then now's the time. And if you're sticking around for this next session, then come on down and see if you can share some table time.
I've got plenty of pens.
All right. I think it's workshop time. And you'll notice that it's supporting people through change, workshop exclamation mark. That's to imply my sense of excitement around doing this sort of stuff. And hopefully that exclamation mark encourages you to be dutifully excited as well with this process. Now, just to get us all in the mood for working and getting our headspace, we're going to do a very quick opening rounds in our circle group here. So just to remind people, if they haven't been in training or things with me recently, an opening round is something that Nancy Klein, who's written a book called A Time to Think, talks a lot about. And she talks about the chance that if people get a chance to contribute at the start of a meeting or a training or a process here, and that everybody gets a chance with no interruptions, that evens up that sense of power in the room. If there's an imbalance of there's a CEO sitting beside you and a volunteer and people feel really nervous, then everybody gets a chance to say something, and so that evens up that sense of confidence, I suppose. The other thing is that if we get a chance to say something positive, then it opens up the analytical side of our mind and the decision-making abilities. So if we are having a look and assessing something and debriefing and discussing, it is absolutely beneficial to say something positive at the start to kickstart our brain into that particular process. And it allows our actions and our ideas that come out to be more focused on that positive side of things, to be strengths-based and all that sort of good stuff. So what I'd like you to do is, in your circles, if there's somebody new in your circle, it might make sense to say your name. And what is one positive word associated with change? Does anyone need 10 or 15 minutes to think here? All right, so it's one person speaking at a time in your circles here, or a mishmash of squiggly lines. No interruptions. There is a sense of power, actually. The person who says, yes, I'll go first, you get to choose whether you go left or right. So I suppose there's power there. So I should only be able to hear 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 people speaking at any given time. I'll make sure, I'll try to suss out whether you've all finished or not at the end of it. But we'll say ready, set, go. Say your name and one positive word to describe change. Ready, set, go. Is everyone done? It just goes against everything if I interrupt you. Is everyone done? Yes? Okay, fantastic. So, given that it's important that people feel that sense of, equality and sense of power, it is the height of rudeness for me to stop someone and to reduce everything. So I must make sure that it doesn't matter how long it takes to get through the circles. So what I'd like to share with you is a few quotes that either inspire me or frighten me, depending on how energetic I'm feeling along the way. So around the concept of change and I suppose our position of power and what we can do about it in our daily lives or our organisation. So number one, we must be the change that we want to see in the world. So I suppose that's a common one. Have people heard that before? Sorry, it snuck up. Go back. Right, there we go. Okay, so first of all, our days begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. So, we are, often continuously fighting in this particular... Stop it. I don't know what I'm doing. waving it enthusiastically. So I just want to, I just want to keep reminding us that even though we're feeling perhaps a little bit stuck, or that we're worried about our jobs or where it's going to go, that there are still people involved in this particular fight. There are still people that need to have support and shared voices, and sharing that sense of power so that we can all do this together. So I think it's still important to keep battling and to keep going on and talking about things that matter here. All right, now we must be the change that we want to see in the world. This is the one that if I'm struggling and thinking, oh my goodness, I can't do this, I just want to relax or curl into a ball or something like that. This is the one that makes the most sense for me, is that I can still be myself, I can still be person-centred, and I can... Stop it. I wish there was a pause button. It just makes that I can listen, that if nothing else, that I can walk into my organisation that day and I can just listen to people. I can ask what support that they need, and I can be positive. So these are the things that I can just do to impact that organisation on that day. And if anybody has seen the impact of a smile, or if there's a grumpy group or grumpy people and you being continuously positive about that, it has an enormous impact. And the opposite as well, is that if there's a whole organisation or area or a group of people that are feeling pretty miserable and grumpy, then that feeds off and jumps into everybody else's psyche as well. So just being positive, just being person-centred and listening really well, asking people what support they need can have a big impact. Now I'm getting confused. I'm not sure whether I've gone. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think we've established that this is a long journey, that this isn't going to be over tomorrow. All right. So anyway, we can go far together. All change starts when people get together and talk about the things that they care about. We move in the direction of the questions that we ask. So if anything, perhaps we just start asking questions. Today, we're going to have a look at where we're at. We're going to ask some questions, have a bit of a think, so that we've got an idea about the direction that we would like to go in relation to change and the process. It's not moving now. If you think you can or think you can't, you are right. So give it a go. Think that you can make a difference and move in the direction that you want to move in. It's getting very excited now. I'm not sure. Anyway, so what we're going to do is actually put some things in place around our working together for change process. Perhaps we're going to skip out a few steps because this is a 2 or a 3 day process. So in the next few minutes or so, we're going to practice and have a bit of a think and hopefully get some ideas about, as individuals, where we want to go and connect with some of the people in the room if there's a sense of partnership or a sense of moving together through this particular process. So perhaps we're at the stage where we'd like to collect. The preparation is that your stage of where we would like to use this information, you think about, in relation to change in your organisation, what is going well, what would you like to change or impact? So yes, there's a lot of change in different sorts of ways, whether it be question about your funding, whether it be there's staff changes, whether there's a new CEO or something like that. Think about, if you were going to make any recommendations or you're thinking about changing your workplace today, where would you like it to go? And then I'd like, with these giant pieces of paper or on your notepad, to have a discussion in your areas about what's working and what's not working about experiencing change right now in your organisation or in the sector. We're just going to get a whole list of ideas. So this what's working, not working template or concept is an idea that we use at Helen Sanderson Associates all the time around being person-centred. It's one of those areas that allows us to focus on not only the things that are not working, but put that balancing act or that sense of things that are working, so that we don't throw out really great things just trying to fix the things that are not working. So we make sure that we get a good representation of our environment, I suppose. So have a chat with the people on your table here and just spend some time getting some ideas about, in relation to change in your organisation or the sector, what do you think are some of the things that are working and some of the things that are not working? Go for it. Yep, write it down. just one more minute, guys, and I know that that's not enough time, but if you've just been having really great discussions and haven't written anything down, make sure you just get 1 or 2 points down. All right, so I'm going to get you to stop right there. This is an exercise that stimulates discussion. Good, still stimulating discussion. That allows us to put all the bits and pieces onto paper so that we can sort out the bits and pieces in our mind, and that allows us to have discussions with like-minded people in order to sort of debate and feed off each other. It can also be an exercise, and just as a tool in itself is something that I use all the time. It is the most commonly used person-centred practice that I engage in. Because just in everything it allows you to get that sense of perspective really commonly. So what I'm going to ask you to do now, after you've written some things down, is rather than... I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to get you to choose 1 point from each side. Choose one area that you would like to maximise from the what's working side, and 1 point from your what's not working side that you'd like to resolve. So as a group, just choose one each, and if you've just got 1 point down, then that'll be nice and easy. Does everybody have 1 point in what's working and not working? Sometimes what is working gets a bit lonely sometimes. And rather than focus too much on this, it's just a little area that I like to think about, and it's this concept that we can think about change or the actions that we do in relation to an individual level, so the top one that we've mentioned here, or in relation to an organisational type level where we can think about changes that we would like to do or actions that we would like to take that affect our organisation. And we might be able to impact that sort of stuff, and we might not. We might prefer to operate at an individual or a team level where we can just affect or have actions that relate to individuals or our individual team. And then there's a system level that can we actually, in all our discussions and our power of group work here, is there anything that we can do that might impact the system? Are we able to say, NDIS, this isn't working in this particular way, we need more information, and here's how? That's a total guess, I'm really not sure. But is there, there's a question, do we have any sense that we can impact anything in that system, that greater system, whether it be government, whether it be the disability system itself or the mental health system, whatever it may be? Sometimes we just need to ask the question, and we often feel disempowered, like we can't possibly affect things up that high. But sometimes, every now and then, there might be an email that we can send or a discussion that we can have that might have an impact. So have a decision in the whatever you circle in terms of, or a point that you choose of what's working and what's not working. You can think about whether you'd like to work on that from a team level, an organisation, just one-on-one, or something that you can achieve yourself. Whether it's something that you'd like to achieve at an organisation, you'd like to impact your organisation in a particular way, or whether it's something that, we're going to aim for the top and see if there's any changes that we can make at a system level. And after you've chosen each of those things, what I'd like you to do is see if that you can come up with an action that either resolves the thing that is not working or enhances the thing that is working. and try and think of an option or an action one that is traditional and one that is radical, that's the exciting one, and perhaps one that is slightly different. So it's different sorts of choices that you might do. And I've got some ones here for my example of funding. So I suppose, if we are, looking at more sustainable forms of funding for my organisation, perhaps a traditional option might be to apply for grants, seek corporate sponsorship. A different action we might charge a fee for service option. It's not too out there. Other people are doing it, just not people in our area. And something radical might be, maybe we'll move out of the building and we'll save some money, we'll all work from home and just have this utopian society living from home and doing things. Might work, you never know. So what we often find is that the radical unlocks an actual possible innovative idea. It might not be exactly your radical idea that you've thought about, but it might link and start the ball rolling in a particular direction. So have a think. Choose an area from your what's working and what's not working, and think about if you've got any solutions that might be traditional, radical, and different. Off you go. We've just got another couple of minutes, so it's okay if you only get one thought out in all the discussion. Thirty seconds. All right, I'm going to get you to stop there, and I'm smiling because I'm going to ask to hear some ideas, and I'm particularly excited about the radical, so I'm not quite sure where to start. There was lots of laughter here, so that's reassuring. Can we start over here and tell us if there's what thing that you wanted to work with, and what was a traditional or not radical and different idea that you had? And you can use the microphone. Holding where you volunteer somebody else to do the job. Get ready.
So what wasn't working was the board wasn't informed properly and it appeared disjointed.
Right.
So then the radical decision was to have a whole new board.
Good, reasonable, yeah.
And do away with everybody and start again. Good. And the... did I really say that?
Yeah, you said it's radical. You're not responsible for any of these radical ideas. You can say what you like. Yeah.
And then the other one was for families to actually do this themselves, to start up a group of families to do it.
Good, thank you. Wonderful, wonderful. All right, coming round here, what's one of who would like to be voluntolded to speak here? Lovely, all right.
Maybe I should start off with the radical. We had down as radical free external expertise, as in facilitators.
So what was your issue or positive thing that you wanted to work on?
What was working was training for staff,
Great.
like giving them the heads up as part of the preparation plan. The radical idea that we had was free external facilitators expertise, because we think that was costly. Traditional, we thought was compulsory training, and then something different was the different methods that we organised that training, which was online and buddy support at trial sites.
Good, thank you. All right, lovely. All right, you guys here. Who's going to speak here? No one. Oh, no. All right, what was the issue or something positive, and what did you do about it?
we discussed about the award and versus the NDIS. And the traditional approach that we would take is, because the award is not working, we would go to the Industrial Relation Tribunal. And then we involve the union, of course. And the radical one would be get all the players, key players, to sit down and come up with a solution. And then the different thing that we would think of doing is EBAs and then or get volunteers. That is all we've got.
Thank you. And what I'm seeing here is that some of those radical ideas could actually come to play if you played your cards right and did some things. All right, who would like to speak here?
Okay, so in terms of, I think, not working, that's always easy to say what's not working. A lot of organisational change is happening for us. We're all from the same organisation. And I guess we thought that in terms of a solution to that, I guess the traditional one is for us to be kept informed about the change, because at the moment quite a lot of change is happening and we just get told, after the fact. In terms of a different approach, it would be nice if we were consulted about that before it actually... I know, well, it is for our organisation. And then I guess more radical would be, how about the staff who actually know the organisation better in terms of service delivery? How about we tell the organisation what to do? Yeah. So that's certainly a bit radical again.
Yeah, you're out there. Yes, and they do it. That's the radical part. They listen. Yes, absolutely. All right, I'm sneaking in here. You can't avoid eye contact here.
The thing that was working well for both our organisations was that we provide unique kind of services and activities and things like that. And so we wanted to... Traditional way of getting our information out there is mail outs, emails, normal advertising, Facebook and things like that. So the radical approaches we thought of was to do like a big TV advertising campaign, or to hire a blimp, advertising blimp. Or a different approach was to sort of swap staff with different organisations to see how their organisations work and things like that. What wasn't working was that we have limited activities due to lack of funding and things like that. So normal thing would be to ask for grants and fundraising and things like that. We thought a radical approach would be to kidnap a politician until they gave us money. Or a different approach would be to partnership with all kinds of different organisations. Yeah.
See, now we're talking, right. All right. Who would like to speak here?
That was actually really good. We actually got a bit carried away and didn't sort of get into that until the last minute, but we discussed the lack of information. So we thought that traditionally we could do information sessions, so all services come together and provide that information in one place. Maybe the radical... what was the radical?
The traditional was more the information sessions, like probably one service doing that information session. The radical was probably, hey, let's get, I think what you're doing is, getting all the services together and actually sharing information and combining information and not reinventing the wheel. Yeah. Like I think I was sort of saying a little bit in our area, it is a little bit like that. We're all sort of trying to, expand all different ways. Yeah. That maybe if we just collaborate and join together. Shocking. Yeah. And different was the golf day, like having a golf day rather than an information session, having fun.
Maybe the key information is on each wall that you've got to...
Yeah.
Yeah, that's reasonable. All right, you guys?
process of elimination. Okay, so we decided that we're all from different organisations, so we wanted to come up with something that was maybe relevant to all of us. So we sort of looked at, I guess, having good relationships with our families was something that was working well. So to, I guess, continue that is just to do what we're doing and maintain that and keep in contact with them. We're, I guess, kind of struggling with something radical, so we thought, you know, maybe looking outside and broadening that sort of context of what relationships sort of mean. So, I guess, you know, relationships with other organisations or whatever it might be. So we thought maybe partnering with, you know, big corporations, and we were kind of thinking maybe get on board with some alcohol companies maybe or something like that, try and get some money. Yeah, why not? So I guess the flip side of that was similar to what you guys were talking about, the communication, the information and getting that across to families. That's kind of tricky in terms of how much information is too much information about giving families that sort of informed consent. So that was something that we felt that wasn't really working, and we didn't really get to workshop those ideas, but I think it's probably two sides of the same coin, you know, just try and maintain those relationships. And I don't know, the blimp idea is really great, you know. Yeah, so.
Thank you. I thought you were going to go somewhere where you were talking about different sorts of relationships. I thought it was going to get a bit frightening there, but I'm glad it didn't. Right. All right. You guys, anything that you'd like to talk about?
Okay, ours was communication, right from the top, from the management committee down to the consumers, or we could say from the consumers, really from the top down to the management committee, how we should be talking. We're a small organisation, and I think during this changing process we've lost a lot of staff. So we've got to get the communication processes. We've had them in line, but we have to resubmit them, and we go back to them and follow them. So that was the traditional. The radical might have been, somebody said, put information on everybody's mobile so you get an update every day. And the different one was to maybe employ a person, like a communication officer, that can have time to plan and do booklets, have some educational sessions, and yeah, so that's what we thought.
And they all sound really reasonable as well. All right, last but not least.
So we looked at, with the NDIS coming in, all of our organisations, I think, are experiencing a couple of staff at least who are just very resistant to change despite our best efforts. So when we looked at the traditional methods, we looked at, you know, all of the stuff that we already know, ensuring communication is happening, and in different ways to suit different people's needs, consultation, training, all of that good stuff. In terms of different strategies we might look at, somebody had just a genius idea about doing a bit of job swapping for a while, changing people's seats and getting them to have a bit of a different perspective about how things work, just to push the focus back on where it needs to be, which is what we're all here to do. And potentially having some people who have been through the scheme come and talk to the staff about what they expect from service providers. When we got to Radical, we've all had some big coffees, so it got a little bit out of control, but some of them were tattooing the word change and NDIS on people, using hypnosis tape at night time. And because we always talk about, you know, staff being on the bus and they have to be on the bus with us, maybe moving from a metaphorical to an actual bus and then throwing them off.
That was really good. Well done, everybody. I'm trying to think of what could be reasonable about some of those last solutions, but I'm not sure. And then I was thinking with that job swap thing that maybe you could dob in another organisation and say, hey, we're swapping some staff. You can have that one and I'll have that good one. Thank you. Sorry, that's it. We're keeping them. Well done, everyone. You know, I think that we often feel like we're stuck into the not-for-profit things that we have to do around our funding. And, you know, the exciting thing of not having any funding anymore for us is that potential of those radical ideas that might actually be possible. So this is an exciting process to consider, that the world is your oyster in terms of planning and changing, and that we might actually have some part to play in some of those changes. So wonderful, wonderful, innovative ideas that I'm going to take back to my organisation and claim as my own. And then we'll see how clever I am there. Now, one of the last things then I would like us to do is a closing round. So same as our opening round, just in the people that are sitting around at your table. One person speaking at a time, absolutely no interruptions. Whoever starts gets the power of left or right. And just look people in the eye and say, what is one thing you've appreciated about our time together here today for the last hour and a half? So ready, set, go. All right, just one thing. Has everyone had a chance to say something? Am I interrupting up the back? I've got one more person. All right. Just very quickly, I get the last say. No. One thing that I've thoroughly enjoyed about, or I appreciated about our time together, is that sense of radical. That radical sometimes is a little bit coffee-fueled, but sometimes it makes a lot of sense, actually. And I really appreciate that sense of innovation as part of a team. And how very exciting that sense of change can be part of everybody here today. So thank you all very much, and I hope to see you for the rest of the day. Yes, lunchtime. You can't go over, not with lunch. Oh, that's a pleasure. Nearly first out. Oh, that's a pleasure. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you, that's lovely. Thanks for drinking. Oh.